My wife almost got shot. Not in war, not during a robbery. Over grass half an inch too long. That's what started it, a violation, then fines, then threats. Then came Victoria white blazer, fake smile, clipboard, loaded. Community standards, she said. But this wasn't about grass, it was about control. Cameras appeared. Paperwork piled up. Lies spread like wildfire. Until the day armed officers raided our barn and pointed a gun at my wife. That's when I realized she wasn't just a ranch wife. She was trained, ready, unshakable, and what she did next turned their rulebook into their downfall. We came here to live, not fight. Meadowbrook Ranch wasn't just land, it was peace earned after years of service. 20 acres, a few gentle cows, and the kind of silence you only get miles from the nearest traffic light. My wife Kelly turned our old barn into a training space for local women. Nothing flashy, just strength, sweat, and freedom. Then Victoria happened. It started at the Piggly Wiggly. She didn't browse produce. She studied my wife like a threat. "You folks from the Henderson place," she asked, all syrup and steel. "Yes, ma'am," Kelly answered politely. Victoria's smile sharpened. "I hope you plan to maintain community standards. We've worked very hard here." Her eyes flicked to Kelly's boots muddy from tending cattle and narrowed. That was the moment I knew she wasn't just a neighbor. She was already calculating how to remove us. 3 days later, she showed up at our gate. Not alone. 2 men in matching polos flanked her like private security. Victoria wore a navy pantsuit like she was foreclosing on the Pentagon, clipboard in hand. Sunglasses mirrored the pasture behind her. She didn't knock. She announced, "Mr. and Mrs. Harper, I'm here to conduct your new resident compliance inspection." We never agreed to any inspection. But Victoria was already walking the perimeter like she owned every fence post. She pulled out a small ruler and bent to measure the grass by our mailbox. She counted our cows, took photos of Kelly's training equipment in the barn. An hour later, she handed us a stack of violation notices. Cows visible from the road. Grass half an inch over regulation. Improper storage of resistance bands. Kelly said nothing. I saw her jaw tighten. Victoria looked at our land like a predator circling prey. She wasn't inspecting. She was mapping her next move. Victoria paused near the pasture pen, hovering, watching the cows graze like they were roaches on a wedding cake. She tilted her head and muttered just loud enough for Kelly to hear. "Rural livestock should stay rural. This is a community, not a farm." Kelly stayed composed, but I saw it in her shoulders locked tight alert. She was reading Victoria like a mission brief. Then, Victoria did something that made my gut twist. She raised her phone and started recording. Not just the cows. Our house, our truck, our barn. Slowly, methodically, like collecting evidence for something she hadn't revealed yet. She smiled without warmth and said we'd hear from her soon. After she left, Kelly stood in the doorway, silent, scanning the yard. "Brad," she said finally, "she's not just enforcing rules, she's looking for a reason to remove us. And worse, I think, she already has a plan." The first real hit didn't come through paperwork. It came through the dark. At 2:13 a.m., motion lights snapped on outside the barn. I grabbed my rifle and stepped onto the porch barefoot. Kelly was already behind me, phone in one hand, flashlight in the other. 3 silhouettes bolted the second we shouted. One dropped something bolt cutters still warm. In the morning, the damage was clear. Fencing sliced open, feed bags ripped and scattered, spray paint across the barn door in angry red letters, "Get your livestock and leave." Victoria didn't come by that day, but a new violation notice showed up in our mailbox. Anonymous, of course. Kelly held it with 2 fingers like something diseased. Her eyes didn't blink. This wasn't harassment anymore. It was sabotage. And the way they moved the cameras, they'd avoided the angle of approach. This wasn't random. It was trained. Someone had hired professionals. 2 days later, an envelope appeared taped to our front gate. Official letterhead. County seal. red stamp that read Final Notice. It claimed we were in violation of multiple zoning ordinances, that our property line had shifted, that the barn might be illegally constructed. I drove straight to the county office. The clerk scanned it once, then frowned. "This isn't from us. Someone copied our format, but the case number doesn't exist." Back home, Kelly didn't look surprised. She was already printing comparison documents, highlighting mismatched fonts, incorrect spacing, a fake signature. Victoria was getting bolder, sloppier. But what really chilled me wasn't the forgery, it was the implication. Someone was trying to build a legal trail. A paper narrative that could be used later to justify seizure fines, maybe even criminal charges. Kelly circled a sentence in red ink. "They're not just pushing. They're preparing to strike." By the end of that week, we weren't alone anymore. A white sedan parked across the road every morning. Same time, same spot. Tinted windows, engine idling. No plates. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Then I noticed the camera lens peeking just above the dashboard. Kelly didn't flinch. She adjusted her jogging route to pass the car directly. Every lap she waved, never smiled. Just let them know she saw. Victoria stopped pretending after that. She showed up at the general store while Kelly was buying fencing wire, loudly commenting on the dangers of untrained women owning livestock. Then came the pamphlets. Folded neatly, slipped into mailboxes around town. Former Navy trainer accused of misconduct. Living among us. No name, but the photo was Kelly's. A cropped image from 10 years ago, mid-drill, soaked and serious. I watched her hold it jaw set. This wasn't a smear. It was step one of an execution plan. We were gone for 3 hours. A vet check in town. Routine. When we came back, the barn doors were wide open. Tires had torn through the pasture. Boot prints on the porch. The lock on the equipment shed was snapped clean. Inside, everything was flipped. Weight racks overturned. Mirrors shattered. Training gear slashed. Someone had taken their time. This wasn't theft. Nothing valuable was missing. Just destruction. Message sent. Kelly walked the room slowly, silently. Her hands never shook, but I saw the way she cataloged every detail. Angles, entry points, shoe sizes. By nightfall, she had the camera footage backed up in triplicate. 3 men, faces hidden. 1 had a limp. She called no one, filed no report, just labeled the footage Phase 2. "Brad," she said quietly, "this wasn't amateurs. They didn't come to scare us. They came to test how far they could go." It happened just before dawn. Kelly was checking the perimeter routine sweep before her morning class. I was inside making coffee when I heard it boots scraping gravel, a dull thud, then a sharp grunt. By the time I reached the door, 2 men were down in the dirt. The third was doubled over, gasping, one arm twisted behind his back in a hold I couldn't even name. Kelly let him go with surgical calm. They staggered, tried to flee. One dropped a phone. She picked it up, opened the last message. Coordinates. Our ranch. Time-stamped. A text from an unknown number. Handle it. Quietly. No name, but we didn't need one. Victoria had crossed a line. They didn't expect Kelly to be trained. Didn't expect a fitness instructor to fight like a ghost. They came to intimidate. They left in silence, dragging each other to a battered truck, and the cameras caught everything. By Monday, whispers had spread like wildfire. People avoided us at the feed store. At the diner, a waitress who used to refill our coffee without asking didn't even make eye contact. Someone had posted online that Kelly was a dishonorably discharged soldier. Another claimed she'd trained militias. A third called her unstable. It wasn't just social. Our insurance agent called about safety concerns. The county zoning board emailed requesting a surprise review. None of it was organic. This was strategy. Victoria was burning our reputation from the outside in, turning neighbors into suspects, then into witnesses. Kelly read every comment, saved every screenshot, printed them, filed them by date and tone. "This isn't random defamation," she said. "It's narrative control. She's laying the groundwork so when something happens to us, no one questions it. I looked at my wife, then the precision in her hands, the stillness in her eyes. She wasn't scared. She was preparing. Kelly never raised her voice, never posted a word online. Instead, she wrote a letter, printed on crisp white paper, signed in ink. Addressed formally to Victoria Monroe, President of the Meadowbrook Homeowners Association. Dear Mrs. Monroe, thank you for your recent correspondence regarding property violations. In the interest of maintaining clear communication, I've taken the liberty of correcting several errors in your documentation. The next 2 pages were a tactical dissection, grammar mistakes circled in red, legal misquotes lined out, misnumbered clauses highlighted with polite questions like, "Did you mean Section 14.3b?" She attached copies of actual HOA regulations formatted to standard. Not a single word of anger. Only cold, flawless precision. We mailed it by certified post. Victoria signed for it herself. 2 hours later, 3 new violation notices appeared on our porch. Kelly smiled faintly. She's escalating. That means she's rattled. And rattled people make mistakes. It looked official. A thick envelope with the county assessor's seal stamped urgent. Inside was a notice claiming we owed $6,000 in back property taxes. Immediate payment required to avoid lien or seizure. It listed parcel numbers. Referenced county code. Even included a QR code linking to a payment portal. Only one problem: it was a complete fabrication. The parcel number didn't match our land. The QR code led to a dead page. The county officer who signed it retired 3 years ago. Kelly didn't react. She pulled the document apart like a technician. Fonts mismatched. Paperweight slightly off. She even sniffed the ink. We reported it quietly. The real tax office confirmed not from them. Brad, she said this wasn't just intimidation. This was a trial balloon. They wanted to see if we'd panic, if we'd pay. Because once you admit guilt, they don't need to prove anything. I woke up at 3 a.m. and Kelly wasn't in bed. I found her in the kitchen surrounded by maps, files, and surveillance screenshots. The coffee was cold. Her eyes were sharp. She was cross-referencing the times of every incident, break-ins, violations, public encounters with Victoria's HOA meeting calendar. It lined up. Too perfectly. "This isn't random chaos, Brad," she said. "It's an operational pattern." I looked at her hands, steady, methodical. At the notebook where she'd logged every face license plate drone sighting. You don't learn this in a civilian life. "Kelly," I said quietly, "what exactly did you do before we met?" She paused just for a second, then looked at me like she'd been waiting for that question. "Structured environments," she said. "You learn to prepare for the kind of conflict you hope never comes, and when it does, you act like you've already lived through it, because sometimes you have." It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the knock came. Sheriff's deputy. Neutral face, one hand resting near his holster. He said they'd received a call reporting unlicensed tactical training on our property. Something about militia drills. Concerns from a community member. Kelly invited him in. Calm, open hands, no sudden moves. She walked him through the barn, step by step. Standard fitness gear, kettlebells, resistance bands, mats. The only thing remotely military were the old manuals on the shelf. He lingered there. "Ma'am, you got a lot of materials here on survival and combat prep. Mind telling me what you're really running?" Kelly didn't blink. "Personal training. Nothing more. I can provide every purchase receipt, and we've already sent compliance filings to the county. Would you like copies?" The officer hesitated, because Kelly wasn't just cooperative. She was too precise, too prepared, and that made her dangerous to the wrong people. It should have ended there. The deputy nodded, almost convinced. But when he spotted a binder labeled Tactical Response Protocols near the shelf, something in his posture shifted. He reached for his radio, then his holster. "Ma'am, step back. Hands visible. Now." Kelly raised her hands slowly. Fingers spread. Voice calm. My hands are up. I am not armed. Please tell me what threat you believe is present." He didn't answer, just stepped forward, gun half-raised, eyes scanning like he was already writing the report in his head. I moved toward them. Kelly stopped me with a look. Controlled. Sharp. "Brad, stay back." She kept her voice low, even. "Officer, you are in violation of standard de-escalation protocol. I'm requesting a supervisor before this continues." He was shaking. Not because she was a threat, because she wasn't scared. And that terrified him more than any weapon would have. He kept the gun pointed at her chest, but his voice cracked. "Ma'am, I need you to lie face down on the floor. Now." Kelly didn't flinch. Her hands remained visible, her stance neutral. "Officer, I am complying. I am not resisting. But I am informing you that your conduct is being recorded and has already triggered an automatic alert to our legal counsel." I watched him falter. The moment hung heavy. This wasn't a hardened criminal. This was a woman in yoga pants, hair pulled back, eyes steady like a rifle scope. She spoke again, same tone. Controlled. Professional. "You were given false information. You've escalated based on assumptions. This is now a liability for your department. I suggest we both step back before this becomes something neither of us can fix." He lowered the weapon. Not because he wanted to, but because she never blinked, and he realized she had the upper hand. I wasn't even asking questions. I was pretending to check prices on chicken wire when I heard two older women whispering near the register. "She's obsessed," one said. "Has clippings. From years ago." The other nodded. "My cousin works at City Hall. Said Victoria's been digging through Navy records. Something about a training accident. 5 years back." My throat dried. Back home, Kelly was at the kitchen table, a single newspaper unfolded in front of her. Her fingers traced a headline like it had weight. "Local woman injured in training drill. Rachel Monroe." The name hit me like a punch. The quote at the bottom stopped my breath. Instructor Kay Harper declined to comment. Kelly looked up. Quiet. Resolute. She broke protocol. I pulled her. It ended her career. I looked at the article again. Rachel Monroe. Victoria's younger sister. And now it all made sense. This wasn't about property. It was revenge. Victoria filed for a restraining order. Claimed Kelly was stalking her, harassing her, threatening her safety. The hearing was set for that afternoon. Rush docket. Emergency status. We had 4 hours to prepare. Kelly didn't flinch. She opened a locked drawer, pulled out a folder thick as a case file. Timeline, photos, recordings. Every encounter, every violation. Cross-referenced with HOA schedules, local law, and public records. She printed copies, labeled exhibits, and rehearsed her opening statement like it was a military briefing. At 2:00 p.m., Victoria entered the courtroom in pearls and pretense. Confident, smirking. Kelly stood up with quiet authority. Her voice was calm, clear, unshakable. She showed the judge video of the men attacking her. Proof of falsified documents. Emails leaked anonymously from HOA staff. Then came the recording. Victoria's voice. Crystal clear. "I found her. She ruined Rachel's career. Now I'll ruin her life." The courtroom went still. Even the judge stopped taking notes. When the audio ended, Victoria froze. Her smile cracked. Her attorney shifted uncomfortably beside her. The judge leaned forward, steepled his fingers, and asked one question. "Is there any part of that recording you'd like to deny silence?" He didn't wait long. "The court finds no basis for your restraining order. In fact, this court issues a restraining order against you, Mrs. Monroe. You are prohibited from contacting or approaching Mrs. Harper for any reason." He turned to Kelly. "Your documentation is meticulous. Frankly, more organized than most legal filings I see. You've demonstrated restraint and professionalism under sustained harassment." He looked back at Victoria. "This isn't a property dispute. This is targeted abuse. And it ends today." Gasps echoed behind us. A reporter in the back scribbled like mad. Kelly didn't smile. She just nodded once. The war wasn't over. But the tide had finally turned. 3 days later, we heard the sirens before we saw the lights. 2 squad cars, 1 unmarked SUV. Officers fanned out like they were executing a warrant. Kelly met them at the door, calm as always. The lead officer stepped forward. "We received an anonymous report of a domestic disturbance. Concerns for your safety. Possibly a hostage situation." I saw it click in Kelly's eyes. She already knew. Victoria had failed in court, so now she was playing her last, dirtiest card. Weaponizing law enforcement again. Kelly stepped aside. "Of course, officers. You're welcome to look around. We have nothing to hide." They hesitated, surprised by her composure, maybe even unsettled. She kept her voice level. "We'll also need your names and badge numbers for our legal counsel, and we have security footage of your arrival." They entered slower now, because they'd expected fear and walked into discipline, documentation, and a woman who no longer intended to tolerate anything quietly. One officer lingered near the barn. His hand rested too long on his holster. His eyes scanned like he was hunting for proof. He asked about the training manuals, the heavy-duty mats, the resistance gear neatly stacked. Then he said it. "This looks like tactical prep. You training anyone out here, ma'am?" Kelly didn't flinch. "Personal fitness only. I've submitted all documentation to the county. Want copies?" Still, the tone had shifted. He wasn't just investigating. He was searching for confirmation of a story he'd already heard. Victoria's story. About a woman with military training. Secretive, dangerous, possibly unstable. Kelly stayed calm. "Clear. We're recording this, officer, for liability, and we'll need a copy of your report before close of business today." They left without incident, but not without suspicion. That's how Victoria worked. Not with facts, with fear. Planted early, repeated often, until even the good ones started to doubt what they saw. I found it by accident. A county zoning map buried in a real estate site. It showed every parcel in Meadowbrook color-coded by owner. Victoria's name was on 5 properties, all adjacent. Ours was the 6th. Together they formed a perfect strip, 28 acres of uninterrupted development potential. If she could take ours, her holdings would triple in value overnight. Kelly laid the map beside the violation letters. Now it's not just personal, Brad. It's financial, and she's playing the long game. We pulled tax records, found her name tied to Shell LLCs. Quiet purchases over 2 years. One neighbor even admitted he sold because of endless code violations delivered anonymously. Victoria had done this before. We just didn't know we were next, until now. Kelly started pinning documents on the wall. Property lines, ownership transfers, patterns. It didn't look like a ranch house anymore. It looked like a war room. The fake tax notice hadn't come from nowhere. Kelly traced the document metadata. Yes, she knew how, and matched a digital signature to a clerk inside the county office. The signature was sloppy, but the name wasn't. Douglas Monroe, Victoria's cousin. A mid-level employee with just enough access to manipulate property records, generate notices, and backdate paperwork without raising flags. Kelly stared at his personnel file like it was a suspect under interrogation. This wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was institutional. "Brad," she said, "if this had gone another week unnoticed, our land would have been marked delinquent. It would have triggered an automatic lien." She picked up her phone. Calm, clinical. Then she called the state attorney's office and reported forgery, abuse of authority, and conflict of interest. No emotion, just facts. Because she wasn't just defending our home anymore, she was preparing to bring the whole operation down. Kelly filed the report like she was submitting a mission brief. Every document indexed. Every photo time-stamped. Copies sent to the state attorney, the county ethics board, and the inspector general's office. She didn't just accuse Victoria. She mapped a network. HOA power forged violations. Property intimidation, and a relative on the inside funneling fake paperwork. We waited. No knock came, no call, not even an email, just silence. But that's how pressure builds. Quietly. 2 days later, the white sedan that used to sit across from our house was gone. The morning mail brought no violations, no HOA notices. And for the first time in weeks, Victoria didn't walk her dog near our driveway. She vanished. But not because she was done. Because she knew the storm was coming, and this time she wasn't the one writing the script. Kelly was, and the final act hadn't even started. The next HOA meeting was supposed to be routine. Budget votes, fence heights, lawn care reminders. But that night, every chair was filled. People stood along the walls. Phones were out. Kelly walked in holding a single black binder. Victoria sat at the front like royalty, calm, untouched. Until Kelly opened her binder. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She presented. Video footage of trespassers, audio of Victoria coordinating harassment, property records with forged entries, the county clerk's name. Then came the map. 6 parcels, 1 missing piece hours. Victoria's face didn't move, but her fingers clenched the table. When Kelly played the voicemail, Victoria whispering about pushing us out, no one in the room blinked. And then Kelly finished with 5 words. "This is not leadership, it's extortion." The room erupted. Not with outrage, with realization. They hadn't been living in a neighborhood. They'd been living in someone else's scheme. Victoria didn't show her rage that night. She left quietly, eyes, cold lips tight. But the next morning a glossy envelope appeared in every resident's mailbox. Inside was a letter accusing Kelly of negligence during her Navy service. It included an edited document falsified to make it look like Kelly's actions had caused a fatal training accident. Kelly opened it, read it once, and said nothing. Then she pulled out the original report, unredacted, signed by the Pentagon. No deaths, no injuries, and a commendation for preventing a fatal incident through decisive leadership. She brought it to the HOA office at noon. She also brought 3 reporters. When the local news aired the side-by-side documents showing clear forgery, it was over. Not quietly, not behind closed doors, publicly. Victoria's final play had become her confession. And for the first time, the town saw her not as a leader, but as a liar exposed. The next HOA session wasn't about votes. It was about reckoning. Residents filed in clutching copies of Victoria's forged letter. Phones buzzed with the news clip showing Kelly's real record. Victoria tried to open the meeting, but no one let her speak. One by one, neighbors stood and told their stories. The fines that came after she disapproved of someone's lawn color. The sudden inspections after a property owner refused to sell. The threats made quietly always just outside what could be proven. Then Kelly stood, not to accuse, but to ask. "How many of you left this neighborhood?" "In pieces." That was when a woman in the back raised her hand and said softly, "I did." She chased us out. The room shifted. No shouting, no chaos, just the weight of a community finally waking up, and turning slowly completely against the woman who'd ruled them by fear. The HOA board held an emergency vote. Victoria sat motionless as the results came in. Unanimous. Removed as president. Banned from holding any future position in the community. But that wasn't the end. The county ethics office opened a formal investigation into fraudulent documents and abuse of power. The forged tax notice, the fake training complaint, the illegal use of her cousin's credentials. Victoria was charged with document falsification, harassment, and conspiracy to defraud. Her mugshot hit the local news by nightfall. No blazer, no smile, just a quiet fall from the throne she built. At home, Kelly didn't celebrate. She filed away the last folder labeled "Closure." Then she poured coffee, sat beside me on the porch, and said just one thing. "We didn't win because we fought back loud. We won because we never stopped watching, documenting, preparing." The war ended with a whisper, and a signature she didn't control. The chaos faded, but Kelly didn't slow down. Within a month, she was leading self-defense classes in the barn, now repaired, repainted, and brighter than it had ever been. Women from around the community showed up. Some had been silent targets of Victoria's control. Others just wanted to feel safer, stronger, heard. Kelly taught them what she knew, not just how to fight, but how to stand, how to document, how to stay calm when the world turns hostile. The HOA board, ashamed and reformed, asked her to step in as interim president. She declined. Instead, she helped rewrite the bylaws, removed the vague clauses that gave people like Victoria too much power. At the next community barbecue, kids played in our pasture. Neighbors stayed past sundown, and no one mentioned violations. They talked about resilience, about standing your ground, and about the quiet woman who turned a ranch into a fortress of dignity. This wasn't just a story about property lines or HOA politics. It was about pressure, about what happens when someone is pushed beyond reason and chooses clarity over chaos. Kelly never raised her voice, never struck back in anger. She prepared, endured, and acted with precision, and in the end, truth won. Not because it shouted louder, but because it never wavered. To anyone watching, especially those who felt cornered, dismissed, or underestimated, let this be a reminder. Never underestimate the strength within someone quiet, especially when they're trained calm and ready. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It documents, it endures, and when the moment comes, it stands. If this story resonated with you even a little, please consider liking this video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who needs to believe in quiet strength again. Thank you for being here. Stay grounded, stay prepared, and never forget, truth doesn't flinch.